Hey everyone, doing a quick demonstration video of how to change your oil in a 2019 Mazda CX-9. This will apply for all second-gen Mazdas, 2016 plus. Real quick before we get started, what you'll need is your oil, a filter. I'm a Mobil 1 guy, so I got some Mobil 1 5W30 with the Mobil 1 M1 108 filter. AutoZone had a deal right now, so I ended up getting the extended performance, although I usually just do any full synthetic oil. You'll also need a funnel, a rag, your drain pan, a 17mm socket, an 8mm socket, Phillips screwdriver, flathead screwdriver, and possibly a new retaining clip in case you break the one as you remove it. They do get kind of brittle down there. Additionally, you will need jacks, or a jack and jack stands. Real quick, the jack point on a Mazda CX-9, on the front end at least, is on the front cross member, so it's right behind the plastic skid plate in front of that exhaust shield. And then you can kind of see the plate that I have the jack sitting on. Once it's lifted into place, put jack stands on either side, just as much room as you need to get clearance. Once you have it jacked into place, you can remove this plastic cover, which is actually right in front of that cross member point. To do that, it requires the flathead screwdriver to remove a retaining clip right there. When I removed it, it broke. They look like that. It's just a plastic head. So I have a replacement one. You'll also need an 8mm socket to remove this piece, and then a Phillips head screwdriver to remove this retainer. Once you have those off, this plate drops and you can access the oil filter and the oil drain plug. I'm not entirely sure why there's a Phillips in addition to an 8mm head to get this off. I don't know if that was done at a service shop before I bought this. It seems kind of strange to use extra tools when not necessary, but I think regardless, you'll need at least an 8mm, probably a Phillips as well. Once you have that plate off and you're ready to start your oil change, remove your oil filler cap and your dipstick and clean them off as necessary. That way as you drain the oil, it doesn't sputter. It'll allow it to drain quicker and without creating a vacuum and spraying oil where you don't want it. Okay, the next step to changing the oil is removing the filter and the drain plug. Luckily this filter is not on very tight, so it's nice and easy to remove. That's not always the case. If you have to use other methods to remove it, it can get tough, whether that's using an oil filter wrench or hammering a screwdriver through it so that you can get some leverage. Never fun to do, but you can look at those methods online if you are having trouble with your filter. So go ahead and spin off the filter. Let that drip for a second. After that has dripped for a minute, then you move on to the drain plug. It doesn't really matter which one you do first, whether it's the drain plug or the filter. I just do the filter first so that I can put the filter upside down on the pan and allow it to drain while I'm working on the rest of it. So now that the filter's off, we can use the 17mm socket to remove the drain plug. And it's not cooperating with me. There we go. Just had to break it loose. Once you break it loose, you don't need to use the wrench. It should be very easy to remove. So you just remove it by hand. I kind of keep pressure on it so that oil doesn't spew out until I'm ready. So now that it's all the way loose, I'll pull the plug. And allow it to drain. The capacity on this is 5 quarts, so you want to make sure you have a big enough drain pan. shouldn't be an issue. It's pretty standard for every drain pan to hold at least 5 quarts. So I'll let that drain for a minute, and then we'll go from there. As the oil is draining, it's a good time to look at your drain plug. Make sure that everything still looks alright, that it's not stripped. This one just has some paint that's kind of coming off of the shoulder of each side. But overall it's in good quality still. It has a crush washer on it, so it's actually not a flange. You could remove this crush washer, and it should be replaced from time to time. This one still looks okay to me though. Additionally, you'll want to get your new filter and rub a little bit of oil along this lip so that as you tighten it, it can create a good seal on the mating surface where the filter engages. Now that the oil is drained, I'm putting the filter on, so you just want to make sure that you have the threads aligned, that you're not cross-threading it. Once it's screwed on and it stops turning, it's obviously not tight yet, so I always get to this point where it stops spinning with very minimal effort, and then tighten it about 1/4 to 1/2 turn more. It doesn't need to be terribly tight. You'll also put the drain plug back in place, and you'll want to tighten that up. And you want that to be tight, but not too tight. I'll look up the torque specs for this. So far I haven't been able to find reliable information on the torque specs for this. Mazda's pretty private about their service manuals, unfortunately, but if I do find that, I'll put it in the description. So that's tight, the filter's in place, all of the oil is drained. Now we're ready to go back up top and fill it up. Once your filter is in place and you know that the drain plug is in and tight, you can move on to filling it. Here in the US, it's 5 weight 30 that we use. This might vary, based on your climate, but here in Utah, I use 5 weight 30. Once again, I'm using full synthetic. You'll want a funnel, just because the fill hole is kind of deep inside of this shroud, and you might make a mess if you don't have it. So I have the funnel in place. Gonna begin to pour and try to keep the mess to a minimum. I'm actually gonna stop recording so that I don't make a mess, and then I'll start the video again when I'm done. All right, once you're done pouring in the oil, once again, the capacity is 5.1 quarts. 5 quarts should cut it. I'll check that on the dipstick as soon as we're done here, but I filled it up with 5 quarts, put the dipstick back in place, put the cap back on. Once that's in place, I always like to start the car back up for just a minute so that it pulls the oil through the filter, and so that you know that you have the right amount of oil in. So I'm going to go and start it up and let it run for just a minute. Give it about 30 seconds or so. And then let it sit for a second. While it's sitting, what I'm going to do is go back underneath, make sure everything is clean, and make sure everything's back into place. Alright, now everything is back in place down here. We have the Phillips head fastener, the 8mm fastener, and then the press retainer clip type fastener. Those three are in place. The oil filter and drain plug cover is back in place. And now what I'm going to do is get out from underneath the car, remove the jack stands, remove the jack, and once we're on level floor, I'll check the level of the oil.